All right, CNT125, we're looking at Chapter 10 on risk management. So we're going to look at some different um, security risks to a network, how we increase some network security, and things we can do to implement device hardening techniques. And as we get to our lab this week, we'll be putting into use some of the techniques we've learned in Chapter 9 as well as Chapter 10, and we will continue some of our security lab tasks in Chapter 11 as well. All right, so let's dig in here. First, they give us a couple terminologies we want to recognize. Data breach, when someone gains unauthorized access to your network. With this, some questions that come up is, what is at risk if somebody does, breach your network? And what do we stand to lose if it's stolen, damaged, or eradicated? So if you're dealing with, a bank and its financial records, you might lose people's financial records, and they might be able to use whoever's a compromised network might be able to use those to siphon off funds, etc., etc. If you're a hospital type situation, you might lose people's health records. So now you have names, identifications, maybe social security numbers, and use those for identity theft and or identity impersonation, that kind of thing. So those become some of the key questions at your facility. What do we have that is at risk, and what do I stand to lose if people get a hold of that? Either get a hold of it or even clear it out, wipe it out, that sort of thing. So fundamental questions that get asked in your situation wherever you're working with your IT kind of crew, if you will. The original term of hacker was actually somebody that was like, the computer nerd that was figuring out how they can do different things with their computer. Oh, look what I can write a code to do this. I can write a program to do that. I can interface this type piece of equipment. Things dealing with Raspberry Pis, those kind of things. What can I do? What can I do with this technology? Today, though, hacker usually has a negative connotation of somebody that's gaining unauthorized access to a network or system. So with that, there's been a couple terms over the years to try to, categorize different types of hackers. White hat hacker, ethical hacker, goals identify security vulnerabilities of all kinds, and then usually bring that to the attention of. Black hat hacker, use their skills to bypass security systems to cause damage or actually, get a hold of data, that sort of thing. And then gray hat hacker, they have their own code of ethics. They might engage in legal activity, hack in, but their intent is not to, steal the data, but actually educate and assist with companies saying, hey, you have this vulnerability. Vulnerability is a weakness of a system, process, or architecture, and it could be maybe just an old operating system has a security flaw or a piece in that can be exploited. Exploit is actually taking advantage of that vulnerability. So let's say we're running an old Windows operating system that has a known port open, that sort of thing. If I try to use that to gain access to it, that would be an exploit. I'm actually taking advantage of it. And a zero-day exploit or zero-day attack is when somebody's taking advantage of vulnerability before people even know it's really a vulnerability. So, kind of that first person, that first group to take advantage of a vulnerability before most people even know it's there. Cybersecurity vulnerabilities are often made public and tracked in your common vulnerabilities and exposures dictionary. Okay, and that is something that if you work in an IT crew in a facility, this might be something that you're checking daily, or somebody at your facility is checking daily to know, is there anything in here that affects us? Is this a vulnerability in a certain software that we have? Yes. Okay. What do we need to do? What will affect? What do we need to do? How do we plan for? That sort of thing. One of the first areas of security is people risks. And this actually is kind of the largest one because this is where most of the vulnerabilities come from. Half of all security breaches, and again, that number might be exaggerated a little bit or might be underreported, are from human errors, ignorance, or omission. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know that blah would cause that problem. Oh, I wasn't aware that if I clicked that, that would create a problem. Oh, I wasn't aware I shouldn't share that information. That is half of all security breaches. And the easiest way to circumvent network security is to take advantage of that. Most people like to be helpful. So if I can pose as someone and ask for a piece of information, oh, I'm having trouble logging in. Can you help me with my a lot of people want to be helpful and provide a piece of information. That might be the little nugget that somebody's looking for to log into this thing, which is going to give them access to this other piece of data that they need to get access to this other piece of data. Okay, so our people, generally humans, want to be helpful, and sometimes will offer up information that helps with this creating a security breach, if you will. And yeah, again, a common method intruder gains access to network simply to ask for a piece of information. Now, most people aren't going to just hand out their password, but if I get a piece of information that I can use to pose as somebody else to be like, hey, well, let me help you reset that password. What password were you using? I might be able to pose as. Social engineering is literally just this: using this knowledge that people make errors and so forth and want to be helpful. This is the key that this is the piece that is probably the biggest vulnerability for networks and network security. And social engineering strategy, manipulating social relations to gain access, absolutely. Again, if I'm posing as an IT person and asking you to give me a piece of information, a lot of people are going to provide it up. Oh, they're going to help me reset my system. And again, I'm trying to get that piece of information so I can log in or get access to something else. On the next slide, I put this in here. If you are a security person or someone interested in security, if you haven't read about this gentleman, Kevin Mitnick, you might want to put this on your TBR pile, to be read pile. His book about Ghosts in the Wires, Adventures in being one of the world's most wanted hackers, which he was, is actually a pretty fascinating read. Mr. Brown's personal opinion, parts of the book were fascinating, parts of the book I just wanted to be like, I wanted to kind of like grab the guy and shake him and go, what are you doing? That kind of thing. But a really interesting read about social engineering. I would say he probably is one of the poster childs for social engineering, because he would find that piece of information and then pose as somebody to get the next piece of information, pose as somebody to get the next piece of information, and then literally walk in through a secure door into a server room and grab a manual off the shelf, if you will. Back in the days when you had manuals on shelves kind of thing. An absolute genius in social engineering, and some of the stuff he did was kind of old school by these standards, but he was doing this in the 80s, before most people even knew what social engineering was. So that leads us to a whole category of types of social engineering: phishing, baiting, quid pro quo, dumpster diving, tailgating, piggybacking, shoulder surfing. So let's just kind of recognize what these are. Phishing, a lot of us are very aware of phishing right now. Used to be, it'd be an email getting you to try to click on a link. Well, these have become a lot more sophisticated, but it's just that idea. I'm trying to pose as something to get you to click on or provide information that I'm going to grab from you and take and maybe use for the next type of thing or gain access to. These come in all kinds of forms. It used to be just the general email before, like, hey, I'm a so-and-so person from a so-and-so country. If you give me so much money, that'll help my family, blah, blah, blah. Those were kind of the beginnings. They have gotten a lot more sophisticated, a lot more targeted, and actually can look very, very legit and real, even though they are not. And this is really trying to get people to provide some kind of information to them. Names, account numbers, passwords, something. And they'll take that information and go with it. Baiting, probably one of the best examples of this is when we all used USB drives, the removable little removable drives, if you will, taking the place of the old floppy disk years ago. There was a study done where a research facility littered a campus with like 300 USB drives, and they were loaded with files that when they open on an interconnected device told the researcher somebody had found the drive and opened it. What it amounted to was about 90% of the people picked up on 90% of the drives, and somebody opened at least one file on almost half of them. Again, most people want to be helpful, like, oh, this is probably somebody's research project. I need to find out how it is so I can get it back to them. Well, all it takes is putting a malware-infested file in there, and now I can start creating bots and other things, or just damaging people's system, but I can be creating bots on people's systems that would allow me to do another type of attack later. I read another study here, too, on this was done at a security facility, and the drives in the parking lot had the company logo on. So these stats were even higher. These stats were even higher of people that picked it up and the number of people that plugged it in. And one of the people that plugged it in was the CEO of the company. They actually plugged that drive in and be like, I wonder who this is. Let me get it back to him. Well, what they didn't know was that company was having a security audit, and the company doing the security audit are the ones that planted the USB drives. So when they came in to meet with the CEO was like, well, hey, how are we doing? He's like, well, you already kind of failed because right there, that USB drive on your desk you plugged in, that was one of our tests that we did for baiting to see if people in your company would plug them in and infect your systems. And they're like, no, we don't have anything infected on it, but it was a test to let you know that that part of your security is failed miserably. So yeah, baiting, this is still kind of a real thing. Quid pro quo, I do something, you return the favor kind of thing. I just need temporary access to be able to do something. I just need temporary access to check my email, blah, blah, blah. And again, that can be a inroads 4. Dumpster diving. Yes. Now, before people shredded documents, dumpster diving, you could find all kinds of printouts and spreadsheets with names and phone numbers and addresses and all kinds of stuff. Nowadays, most people shred, burn, destroy documents like this, and a lot of places don't have near as much paper printouts as they used to. But again, I put Kevin Mitnick here again. He was kind of a pro at this. Back in the 70s and 80s, he was dumpster diving behind companies, pulling out spreadsheets of people's names, phone numbers, so forth. And what he would do is he would use that information and call, we'll just say we're going to call the person Sally Smith kind of thing. Call Sally Smith, who is one of the people in the company, and he would pose as a repair person. Hey, I'm down at 3rd and Market. I'm working on blah blah blah, and I can't seem to get in the building. Do you remember what the passcode was to get in? And more times than not, that person would provide the information. Now he's into that building. And now he would call somebody else and pose as blah, 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 and get the next piece of information. And that's all from dumpster diving and getting documents out of a dumpster to get names and phone numbers and so forth. And it was a process of gathering little nuggets, providing that, and getting another nugget, providing that, getting another nugget, providing that. And eventually he was walking into data centers in a company and walking into where the servers were and getting a manual off the shelf, just as a challenge. He was doing this as just a challenge at the time. Tailgating, an authorized person following an authorized person into a secure area. Hey, I swiped in, and while the door's closed, and they follow in behind you. And they didn't actually swipe in and that sort of thing. And then piggybacking. Posing as somebody like, hey, posing as like a delivery person. Hey, can you hold the door for me while they're holding boxes? And you're letting somebody in that should not be in the facility. So again, training and even signs on door reminding people of, don't hold the door for, only swipe yourself in, that sort of thing. And that helps a little bit. But again, a lot of people want to be helpful. They actually do want to be helpful and provide for. Or help somebody with a problem. Hey, they look like they're carrying heavy boxes. Shoulder surfing. Literally peeking over somebody's shoulder while they're logging in, gaining passwords, getting usernames, etc. Again, to try to use at another point to get in. And it's not very hard in some places to do so. Okay? Especially if somebody leaves their system, walks away from their system while it's logged in. The most important defense against all this is employee training. And really, if I let people know that these things are an issue, I'm reducing the number of threats. I'm not going to get rid of all of them, but I'm reducing the number of threats because people know, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be holding the door open. I shouldn't be, providing any kind of information, especially if I don't know who they are. Let me pause there, and we will continue on the next podcast. Just seeing where we are. All right.